Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining JINSA for an update on Israel at war. I'm Blaise Misztal, JINSA's Vice President for Policy, and I'm honored to be joined by two of JINSA's Distinguished Fellows from Israel, IDF Major General Yaakov Amidror, former National Security Advisor, and Major General Amikam Norkin, former Commander of the Israeli Armed Forces. Generals, thank you so much for being with us. It feels like we've spent much of the last week or two waiting to see if there would be an Iranian response to the Israeli strike, waiting to see who would be the next president of the United States. But at the same time, there have been action and development on the various fronts that Israel is fighting on. So General Amidror, I wanted to ask you to give us a tour of what the status of the war is on the southern front, on the northern front, elsewhere, but maybe starting with the north, because it feels like the north has become or remained deadly in the last several days. We had another Israeli killed, unfortunately, on Wednesday, 7 civilians killed last week, a number of IDF troops killed in battle in Lebanon. But at the same time, we're hearing that Hezbollah has been severely degraded. So what is the status of Israel operations in Lebanon?
As we spoke in some of the meetings before, there are two main efforts in the north. One is close to the border by ground forces, cleaning the area. The first 2-3 kilometers, which controlling with line sight the Israeli side of the border. That is towards the end. Another 2-3 weeks, and that will be ended. And then the decision should be taken if we are moving to the north, to the next line of the Lebanese settlements. That is connected to the whole process in Lebanon, but also to the decision where to put the ground forces efforts. The second effort is done by the Air Force based on intelligence targets that we had before the war, targets that we are collecting through the war, and that is going on very extensively, and more targets in the north, Baalbek, the Dahya, and other places destroyed by the Air Force, and that degrade the capabilities of Hezbollah in specific places. We had success this week to eliminate the intelligence center of Hezbollah in Damascus, including the guy who ran the center and some people around him. And this is, a continuous effort to degrade the capabilities of Hezbollah. In the south, the main effort is about the north part of Gaza. They separated the north part of Gaza, which was isolated by Deterring corridor, to 2 parts, and they are cleaning the north part of that. Cleaning meaning that they are evacuating all the citizens, all the civilians, and killing the terrorists. And many terrorists had been killed. And we believe that this time, if that will be ended within a few weeks, maybe a month or two, the north part of the northern Gaza will be totally clean from terrorists. Then we might move it to the south, and slowly, within a few months, cleaning the whole north part of Gaza without going to the starvation stage. It's what was offered by the generals, to what called the generals' plan, to move all the civilians, and then to remain with the terrorists and to kill them, not by starving them, but by killing them. Today, the decision is that towards the end of 95, the summer of 95, of 25, I don't know if the majority, but big part of the evacuated citizens will go back to their homes. We are preparing it. We have to renovate some of the areas. We have to make sure that they don't have a line of sight and ability to launch a anti-tank missile into those places. Will be the effort in the next few months to provide those that will come back towards July, August, the ability to live in good condition, that they don't be afraid and will not be harmed by Hezbollah. And next month we will begin to renew the moving of the train from Ashkelon to Ashdod, and that will be a great relief to the people living around the road. Then they can go free by the train directly to Tel Aviv. It means that the army does not see any threat of missiles coming from Gaza Strip into the area in which the train is moving. It's very much connected to what I told you about the cleaning of the north part of Gaza, and that symbolizes more than anything else the readiness of the army to guarantee the civilian life of the people coming back to the envelope of Gaza. About Iran, many people ask themselves, okay, what the Iranians are waiting for? And I think that the Iranians are now sitting in a gap between their desire to retaliate and their understanding that if they do it, they are exposing themselves to something that they don't have an answer to. It's the ability of Israel to destroy almost everything in Iran without the ability of the Iranians to defend it. After the destruction of the S-300 by the Air Force, it is clear that the Air Force can move into Tehran whenever will be needed. I'm saying specifically Tehran, because this is the center of gravity of Iran, and the Iranians have a nightmare of bringing Tehran under fire. That for them it is devastating issue. So we are planning, they can restrict themselves, and then Israel will not be ready to escalate and restrict itself as well. So they can play, but at the end they understand that they expose themselves, that if the decision will be taken tomorrow in Jerusalem or in Tel Aviv, Tehran does not have the ability to defend itself. And this is the stage in which we are waiting to the decision. I think that they didn't decide it, that they are still hesitating what to do. They spoke about acting from Iraq. I believe that the Iraqis are really understand they will pay the price. Two operations undercover against the oil in Iraq, and it's the end of the economy of Iraq. So I think that the Iraqis understand it. I'm quite sure that they are not happy from the wish of the Iranians to use them as launching pad against Israel. It's risking Iraq for nothing. Can they stop the Iranians? I'm not sure about it. What we know is that if we can learn something from there, that Assad is limiting part of the movements of the Iranians inside Syria. So maybe leaders in the Middle East begin to understand that cooperating with the Iranians, there is a price that they are not ready to pay. And everyone in the Middle East is waiting for the new administration in Washington. What does it mean, Trump as a president? And everyone is puzzling about the policy of the president. Something will be better understood. We will know who will be nominated: Minister of Defense, Secretary of Defense, Secretary of State, and so on and so forth. Head of the CIA, the head of the White House. I think that will reveal something about the character of the new administration in Washington, and everyone understands that Washington will have huge weight in the decision making in the Middle East.
Thank you, General Amidror. Staying with the North for just a second before touching on the other subjects that you mentioned, if I could ask General Norkin, one thing that has struck me is that the war in the North has unfolded very differently than the way that it was described and planned for, at least in conversations that we JINSA have had with the IDF. You know, one of the things that we heard a lot was that Israel was ready to carry out 3,000 airstrikes per day for several days on end, and the emphasis would be eliminating as much of Hezbollah's assets and capabilities as quickly as possible at the outset of any conflict. And instead, we've been seeing, on average, according at least to the data that we've collected here at JINSA, something like 100 to 150 strikes a day. And even though, you know, we've been told that a lot of Hezbollah's assets have been eliminated, you know, we still see their capability to launch rockets and drones that have lethal effects. So I guess my questions for you, General Norkin, are, you know, what is the reason for this slower pace of airstrikes? Is it a strategic decision? Is it operational constraints? What is shaping Israeli operations, and how much more needs to be done to make sure that Hezbollah can't keep attacking Israel?
Well, thank you, Blaise, for the question. As you remember, in our more than one webinars, I mentioned that we are cutting slice by slice the Hezbollah capabilities since October 8th. So the scenario that we mentioned in JINSA the last few years is not the scenario that we are facing with, because, you know, we are acting in Lebanon almost 10 months before we accelerate our activities, and we reduce many of the Hezbollah capabilities, especially at the south part of Lebanon. Having said that, we, at the strategic level, achieve our goals against Hezbollah in 5 days. And the first day was the Beepers Day. You're on mute, Amidror. Did you?
I said Eid al-Beeper.
Eid al-Beeper, yeah. So, if you remember, the 2 days after the Beepers, Nasrallah planned to project power by launching thousands of rockets in the morning. So we did a quite wide operation, and at that day, the tempo, the specific day, the tempo that the Israeli Air Force act was a tempo of 5,000 targets per day. We didn't complete the whole 24 hours. We did it just for 16, 18 hours. But at that specific day, we accelerated to the maximum, and we attacked most of the launchers that Hezbollah planned to launch from those launchers rockets toward Israel. And then, of course, a few days later, we attacked the Hezbollah headquarters. We did it twice. And today, most of the Hezbollah commanders are already been killed. So we already achieved our goals in Lebanon. But once you are fighting with against a terror organization that got rockets and missiles, tens of thousands, he is going to shoot every day 50, 60, 70 rockets until the last day. There is no meaning to look for the last launcher, single pipe launcher. This is not the main issue. The main issue is the targets that the Air Force attack in Baalbek, in the Dahia, in the saw all the other areas, and the ground forces cleaning the terror tunnels and storage of a lot of weapon in the south part of Lebanon, the 10 kilometers around the border. And I think that we are already there. There is another area at the eastern side near El Khiyam, which we need to finish the mission there with the ground forces. And I think that this is the right time for us to achieve an agreement led by the American government. And by this agreement, Israel is going to be able to act once we are going to recognize any threat north of the Lebanon border, which is a very important message and important agreement for us. And if I may, I would like to add another thing about the Iranians.
Sure, please.
They are not decided when, they are not decided yet from where and how. I think that they are going to act, and in this short period of time, we still got things to do. And if we are going to do the right things and to present and project power, maybe we can reduce the Iranian activities. The Iraqi government got no tools to avoid Iranian activities from Iraq by the Iranian militias. And in those areas, I think it will be a very good advice to have a better cooperation between the American forces and the Israeli forces, because the American, especially CENTCOM, got a lot of intelligence over the Iraqi territory.
Thank you, General Norkin, and I definitely want to come back to this issue and question of what can we be doing to try to deter Iran from attacking again. But let me ask General Amidror first, staying with the North for a little bit longer. Sort of, how long until you think Israel will be ready, or the possibility will exist to reach a ceasefire deal or some sort of agreement? And then what does the situation in the North look like after that? General Norkin talked about the importance of Israeli freedom of action, which it's critical for any deal to recognize, so that Israel can go back in and degrade any Hezbollah that reconstitutes. But is it just going to be that Israel keeps going back in to clear Hezbollah? Is there an Israeli belief that LAF or UNIFIL or some other security force can fill the vacuum in the south of Lebanon and actually be a buffer against Hezbollah coming back to the south? What does Lebanon look like in if and when we have a ceasefire?
In what we want to achieve, there are two elements that should be agreed in any ceasefire agreement. I'm not sure that that Hezbollah is ready to do it. Maybe we need more time to make Hezbollah understand that every day we degrade its capabilities. And not less important is that the mood within Lebanon, between other fiction of the Lebanese society, will understand that the price that they are paying is too high and might put pressure on Hezbollah. They cannot act against Hezbollah. No one has the military capability to act against Hezbollah. They can put pressure on the media, in the public opinion, and so on and so forth. Today, a comedian, rapper from Beirut, told the story, when we will be ready to say that we are not winning after we are not ready to say it, when Nasrallah disappeared, when all our missiles disappeared, when all the substitute to Nasrallah had been killed, and so on and so forth. So the Lebanese understand it, and slowly, I believe will be a pressure on Hezbollah. How far the pressure will go and how strong Hezbollah will be, it very much depends on the cohesion between what we are doing, what is losing, and what will be the pressure inside Lebanon. And of course, America and France can contribute to this pressure. This is the only leverage that they have. We need two important demands that we have. One, we agree that it will be something like 1701 with some modifications. But the big but is that it will be enforced by the IDF, it will not be enforced by someone else. It's not like in 2006 in which it was not enforced because UNIFIL is a bad joke and no one was there to impose it and to control the area. It's very important that it will be agreed that if it is not done as we think that it should be done, we have the right to go in and to do whatever is needed. And this is about South Lebanon. Where is the line? We can argue, but somewhere between the Litani and the border, or Iraq, or along the Litani. The second issue is not about the South at all. It's about the efforts of Hezbollah and Iran to rearm Hezbollah. We have to have the ability to prevent it. The huge mistake that we did in the last 20 years, during which we allowed the monster to grow near our border, should not be repeated. We made strategic mistake. We are eating now the awful fruits of this mistake. We should not make the same mistake again. We have to have the ability to prevent Iran, Syria, and Hezbollah from rearming Hezbollah in Lebanon. And for that, we have the freedom to act in Lebanon and in the border between Lebanon and Syria. Syria is, anyhow, will be dealt with us, and I believe that the more that we will be active there, the less it will be the patience of Assad to let the Iranians and Hezbollah to act from his country. But leave alone Syria, for us it's very important that any agreement after the war, it will be clear that Israel has the right to prevent Iran and Syria from rearming Hezbollah, and we have the right and from our point of view, the obligation to continue to degrade Hezbollah. Will Hezbollah agree to such a ceasefire? I'm not sure at all. It will not going to be easy, not at all.
Maybe this is slightly off topic, but I'm curious, General Amidror, since you raised Syria and the need to try to disrupt the supply lines to Hezbollah, how important, if at all, is the U.S. military presence in Syria in doing that or in assisting or supplementing Israel's efforts to do that?
It's very important not for supplementing Israel's efforts, but to prevent the Iranians to use the vacuum to send their forces to be there and to the West and to be a huge obstacle for Israeli efforts to prevent Iran from building independent Iranian forces in Syria. It's crucial that the Americans will remain there. It's not because Israel needed to help Israel, it's because it will provide the Iranians the open corridor that they need.
Thank you. Speaking of Iran, General Norkin, I wanted to come back to you and this point you raised of things that we should be doing in the meantime while we wait for an Iranian response to try to deter or shape that response. What do you have specific ideas of what sort of deterrent activities we should be doing? And is something like a preemptive strike something that Israel would consider?
Well, about the preemptive strike, it depends what are the Iranians' plan and from where they are going to act. From Yemen, from Iraq or from Iran. And I think that those options are on the table now. About the power projection, usually I think that we should send a message to the other side that we are ready. We have got a very good cooperation, coordination with our neighborhood and, of course, with the American forces. There might be some exercises. We should do some flights with the strategic fleet, of course, the American platforms. We should prepare our air defense, and we should show that we are preparing ourselves. And by those activities, I think that the Iranians might understand what General Amidror mentioned, that if they are going to act, they might lose a very important assets in Iran. You are mute. We didn't just destroy the S-300. We also destroyed some of the Iranian capabilities that are part of the corridor to the next level of the targets. For example, as been published in the media, we attacked the south part of Iran. This is the corridor to the ports, to the oil strategic targets. So I think that the Iranians understand the message.
You mentioned exercises and signaling offensive capabilities. Are there additional defensive capabilities that the United States could assist with, either deploying to Israel, like more air defenses, or to the region that would also be helpful in the event of another Iranian attack?
I think that the American forces did a lot. We are ready. But from time to time, we need to present it, to show some of those capabilities to the public.
Understood. Is the deployment of B-52s to Al Udeid a useful deterrent signal, or is it just putting a very big target very close to Iran?
I think it's an important step that's been done.
All right. Well, I have a couple more questions I want to ask, and then I want to invite the audience to submit any questions that they have for Generals Amidror and Norkin. You can use that. You can do that using the Q&A feature in Zoom. If you type in your question, I'll pose it to the generals. But first, I wanted to ask General Amidror, since you mentioned the election of President and now President-elect Trump. How is Israel thinking about what the change in administration might mean? Is it affecting Israeli strategy and operations in any way, changing what Israel is going to try to do over the next 2 to 3 months while we have the lame duck and before President Trump comes back into office?
Yes, we appreciate the American system in which there is only one president, and the present president is President Biden, and all the decisions will be taken by him. We know that the culture of unelected president, and he didn't run, so it's easy. They are not making big decisions during those 2 months. But he is our partner. With him, we have, and his administration, we have the dialogue, and now there is nothing on the table that we should consider. But if the Iranians decide to retaliate, of course, that will be the people that we will speak with. What will be the policy of President Trump in the future? I think it's unknown. It's unknown to us. It's unknown to the Americans. It's probably unknown in many areas to Trump himself. We know the system. He's learning now. He will be briefed, and he will nominate the people with which he wants to work: Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense, the head of the CIA, the Chief of Staff of the White House. This is the 4 people and the National Security Advisor. These are the 5 people which are very important to the continuation of relations between us and the United States of America. We apparently, I don't know all the names, of course, but from what I understand from friends which are more familiar with the American politics, it's a friendly House and friendly Senate. So I hope that we will have a good relations with the next administration, and we are waiting to see what will be the policy of this administration. I think that they will learn that unlike their prediction, it is not so easy to close a deal, not in Lebanon, and for sure not in Gaza. And the leverage of the United States of America, this administration, the next administration, is very, very weak relating to Hamas, more relating to Lebanon, but the leverage of Lebanon on Hezbollah is very so. It is not going to be so easy.
Speaking of personnel changes, General Amidror, I wonder if you can tell us anything about the change in defense ministers that happened in Israel this week, and what implications it might have, if any, for how Israel fights this war.
I think that this is a political decision by the Prime Minister based on domestic politics of Israel, which I'm not familiar with and I never understand, don't pretend to understand. What I know for sure that professionally it will put, for the meantime, till the new minister will learn the system and how to control it and how to be the one in between the guys in uniforms and the Prime Minister, it will put much more burden and responsibility on 2 people. One is the Chief of Staff, and the second one is the Prime Minister, because the bridge which is bridging the gap between them does not exist. It will take him time to learn, and all the mechanism which is connecting the military side, the political side, the civilian side, the international relations with, for example, the Pentagon and so on and so forth, that will remain on both of them, because the Minister of Defense, with the lack of experience about the specifics of the war, will take time to learn it.
Given that you mentioned the importance of the Chief of Staff, maybe in the meantime, while the new Minister of Defense is getting up to speed, there's also been rumors that General Halevi might also be soon relieved.
It was denied by the Prime Minister office.
All right. So with that, let me turn to questions from the audience. Josh Katzen asks, why doesn't Israel take out Iran's missile stockpiles? So General Norkin, maybe for you, we know that as part of Israel's strike in Iran, they targeted Iran's missile production capabilities, but not necessarily the stock. So Iran's ability to produce missiles going forward, but not necessarily the missiles that Iran has right now. Was that a strategic decision? Was that a tactical or operational one that they're harder to hit? What's the thinking there?
There are many assets and many storages all around Iran, and some of them they are underground stored. So it's a very complicated mission, and I think that this is part of our operational plans for the next steps.
What about launchers? Are launchers easier to hit perhaps than missile stockpiles? Or I understand that they're mobile launchers for the medium range ballistic missiles that Iran uses.
Once the launchers are standing in the launch point, you can target them. But usually those launchers are underground infrastructures.
All right. General Amidror, a question maybe for you from Charles Wax, who asks, what about the American statements that they will hold up weapons if more aid is not sent to Gaza? What is the status of humanitarian assistance to Gaza, and any discussions that Israel's having with the U.S. administration about whether they're going to make good on their threats?
With all due respect, I think that there is a huge exaggeration about the crisis in Gaza. People are not dying in Gaza. It's not a convenient place to live. Don't take it to the other side, but it's not a convenient place. But there is no crisis. Enough water, enough food. Maybe the prices are very high. Enough energy. Now Israel decided to connect electricity to Gaza, and we are working on the line which will connect electricity coming from Israel into Gaza. Enough medicine, by the way. I had the number, I think 1,700 cars or trucks came in the last month. The huge number of humanitarian help is coming in. I can give you a number. I asked someone who has the knowledge about that, because I understood that will be asked by many people around the world, because the exaggeration and the description of the problematic situation in Gaza, which are not connected at all to their reality, are flourishing around the world. So I asked the number, and I'll give you within a minute. I have it here. Of course, I don't remember the number.
But if I may, the last 3 days, the markets in Gaza, they are closed because the citizens demonstrate against the prices of the food and the materials that are now much higher. So I think that if they are allowing themselves not to buy, and there are products, but they are not buying because of the prices, this is another signal.
In the last month, 1,740 trucks, which took inside 33,000 tons of humanitarian aid, including food, water, and medicine need, and what is needed for being better prepared covers for the winter. So in 1 month, 33,000 tons of humanitarian need went into Gaza. With all due respect, if you ask me today, the situation of relating to electricity and medicine in Gaza, it's better than in Beirut.
Is that going to be enough to satisfy the
I don't know. This is not about the humanitarian crisis. It's about the political decision of the American decision makers, if they are ready to declare that it is enough or not. It's not connected to the reality on the ground. It's a political decision.
So maybe one last question for you, General Amidror, and if there's any more questions from the audience, please feel free to submit them using the Q&A feature. But you mentioned, General Amidror, that the northern part of northern Gaza might soon be cleared of Hamas. Is there an Israeli plan for what happens after that in that part of Gaza? Will it be the day after then?
There is plans. The Americans are the Americans had been informed about the plans. I'm not sure that the third party is ready to enter. For that, we have to complete the mission in north part of Gaza. Then it will be big enough to begin negotiations about the practical solution on the ground. But we are working very hard to find the good partners to do it.
Are you getting assistance from the United States in looking for those partners, or is it something that Israel's having to do on its own?
We did it on our own, and from the minute that we felt that there is something behind it, it's not a hollow dream of us. We informed Americans, and Americans will have very important part in this implementation.
Thank you. Well, thank you, generals, for your time this evening. I know it is very late in Israel, so as always, we appreciate your insights. Thank you to the audience and everyone who tuned in. Since we finished by talking about the day after in Gaza, let me recommend to you a paper that we put out last week by our Randy and Charles Wax Senior Fellow, John Hanna, which is looking at whether it is the day after yet, and raising some of the recommendations that JINSA has put out over the last year and why they're still relevant for trying to move towards a day after, or at least prepare for it in Gaza. So thank you all very much, and look forward to seeing you on the next webinar. Good night.
Thank you very much, and good night. Thank you.